You're watching Over the Edge from Event Horizon with John Michael Godier. In today's episode, John is joined by SETI astronomer Dr. Claudio Maccone. He's the Director for Scientific Space Exploration, as well as the Chair for the SETI Permanent Committee at the International Academy of Astronautics. In 2002, he was awarded the Giordano Bruno Award by the SETI League for his efforts to establish a radio observatory on the far side of the Moon. Claudio earned his BSc in Physics at the University of Turin in 1972 and his MSc in Physics at the University of Turin in 1974. He earned his PhD at the Department of Mathematics at the University of London King's College in 1980. He has published nearly 100 scientific and technical papers, most of which in Acta Astronautica. The asteroid 11264 was named Claudio Maccone in his honor by the International Astronomical Union.
Let me ask you this. Okay, the reason we look at 1420 megahertz is because that is the radio frequency at which neutral hydrogen can emit radio waves. So we're looking for benchmarks in SETI. Is Sagittarius A, the supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy, a benchmark that, all scientists, it seems to me, within the galaxy would know of this. So is this a natural place to look for radio signals, or perhaps related to focal, where you might see an alien civilization, evidence of it? In other words, look here. Is that a possibility?
Yes, sir. Correct. The center of the galaxy, in loose term, is the most important and interesting place, at least to my opinion, in the galaxy to look for an extraterrestrial civilization. And not just because of that, but also because the average distance in between any couple of stars orbiting around the center of the galaxy is, statistically speaking, smaller than the average distance between, for instance, us and Alpha Centauri. In other words, the distance between us and Alpha Centauri is about 4.37 light years. Good. But the distance between any couple of stars around the center of the galaxy is much smaller than that. And this means that if a civilization is grown up on a planet orbiting one of those two stars, then at a certain point of advancement in their history, they can travel to the other star and set up another civilization. You see? So in statistical terms, again, we are talking a region of the sky that has a much higher probability of hosting extraterrestrial civilization than anywhere else in the galaxy.
What about the radiation environment within the center of the galaxy near Sagittarius A? Would that interfere with anybody wanting to place, say, a transmitter at whatever location they need to use the supermassive black hole to send a SETI signal? Does that complicate things too much? Meaning, is it just simply too wild of an environment to place anything there to announce your presence to the galaxy?
Yes, of course, you are right. It is too wild already on the Moon, and on Mars, and on, not to speak about the Jupiter satellite and Saturn and all that. So, yes, you are right. For life as we know it, that is our life, and we are the only kind of life we know about. This is another incredible constraint that we have to put on all scientific investigation. We only know one type of life, that is ourselves, period. So, as far as life as we know it is concerned, you are absolutely right. It's a hell over there. Nobody knows if other forms of life could possibly exist. But that takes us into another investigation topic, if you let me answer this way. And this is the question of the singularity. That is, are we humans close to the time when computers will take over with respect to humans? And if I can express my opinion, the answer is yes. I completely share the opinion of Kurzweil, the guy who wrote the book about, the most important book, I guess, about the singularity. He predicted, so as to say, that the singularity might occur in a few tens of years, say a few centuries if you want to be generous. But it will happen sooner or later. And actually it is already happening in some areas of artificial intelligence. We are all scared about these cases of aircraft being pulled down by computers, and you know what I'm talking about. So here the point is, if beyond the singularity, a civilization made up of machines, we call them computers, but we don't know what the hell they could possibly be, starts growing around, maybe these machines can defend themselves against the radiation. And so maybe they can survive, something that we cannot do today, even on the moon, you know, even on Mars. It's ridiculous. When it comes to meeting with medical astronautics trained people, I prefer not to listen, because they have to face so many problems in order to keep the astronauts alive today that I feel no envy for them. You know, I am an astrophysicist, mathematician, and I am glad in this regard that I never studied medicine, because I would have suffered too much from seeing humans unable to live too much outside the human environment, which is the Earth. Anyway, machines can possibly do that. So if the singularity will come, and I don't see why it should not come. Actually, let me tell you, confess that once I was talking with the great astrophysicist Kardashev about this, and he and I was completely agreeing that if the singularity is the next step in evolution, there is no way for us to cope with that. We can just die and let hope for machines that they can survive and keep developing in spite of all the problems that I mentioned. Thank you.
Now, envisioning a machine civilization, a post-singularity machine civilization, it would seem that, I mean, it's as Kurzweil says, it's incomprehensible, but there are certain things that one has to wonder about. For example, computing efficiently. So if a machine civilization were to arise, say we became a machine civilization, and went into space. Now, space is a very cold environment. So cold means easier computation. So should we look for machine civilizations in certain areas of the galaxy? For example, the outer rim of the galaxy, where you find the lowest possible temperatures. Or should we look for areas where the most energy is available that they could use for calculation? Where would one look in the Milky Way for a machine civilization?
Well, again, I have an opinion about that. I would prefer looking towards the center of the galaxy, because, as I mentioned, there are many factors telling us that this is the region where probably it's easier for a civilization to be born in the past, grow up to the singularity and beyond the singularity. I would honestly not look for the outer edge of the galaxy, because in trivial terms, there is nothing out there. There is cold, as you said, which is good for computing, but it's bad for living. And it's also bad in as much as you have much higher transmission times to reach any star and any black holes. So again, thinking that all stars and black holes are gravitational lenses, getting out to the outer edge of the galaxy is not a good place. There are, you know, the Kuiper belt and all that are just small rocks, but the gravitational lenses that do exist in theory for these objects are so miserable in powers that is not a good place, in my opinion.
Should we detect a machine civilization through SETI, it would seem to me that there is a natural communication point there, which is mathematics, because a machine necessarily would understand it intuitively, even more so than us biological beings. So is there any way that you can envision mathematically that a machine civilization might say, here we are machines, here is a mathematical signal that you can understand as biologicals. Can you envision any way that this could be, that they could make an unambiguous, decipherable mathematical signal and send it to us?
Of course, yes. I mean, if you are a learned person, you can always lower yourself to the level of illiterate people and talk to them, even if they do not understand anything. But in the beginning, later they will understand. This is what happened all the time when the higher civilization reached a lower civilization in history, right? So yes, probably if this is the case, meaning that if machine civilization want to get in touch with miserable guys as we are, or beginners, like, okay, a little less pessimistic, well, they can do so. For instance, just look at the movie Contact, just the prime numbers. You see that the lady discovers the first hint of an extraterrestrial civilization by finding out the prime number sequence, 1 and so on, being picked up by the radio telescope. And prime numbers cannot be possibly produced by natural whatever, natural objects like stars and so on. They have to be produced by some forms of intelligence. So this is an example of how a machine civilization might wish to transmit in order to tell us, hey, we are here, we are much more advanced than us, but we feel pitiful, and we want to help you to make progress. And here I'm being optimistic because they might really be willing to not just to colonize this miserable stellar system, but someone, but they don't like this idea, might take advantage of our knowledge for whatever purposes. So anyway, yes, the most advanced civilization can lower themselves to the least advanced civilization's knowledge.
One can envision scenarios. Say we are the Taino, and say we find the Maya ships. We see them, and we buy their cacao beans and things like that. We find a civilization, and they say, there is someone else here in the galaxy, an analog of the Spanish that is much, much more powerful that you shouldn't contact. Do we put things like restrictions on METI and sending out Arecibo signals so that we don't become visible to the galaxy? One can easily envision scenarios like that. Is that something that you think about, that maybe we should only be listening rather than maybe we should tone down our signals? Do you think that prudence should rule in what we're sending out to the galaxy?
Yes. Now here I have to apologize to my good personal friend, Doug Vakoch. You know, Doug and I have been working together in the SETI community for 20 more years. We met around the world, in Paris, in America, anywhere. But about this point, I have to disagree with Doug. And to disagree with all these ideas of METI, and also with the Russian equivalent of Doug, that is Dr. Alexander Zaitsev, who actually did send some transmission from the Eupatoria radio telescope in the Crimea 10 or more years ago. Now, let me please explain why I disagree. Well, the number one reason is the one that David Brin, even too strongly perhaps, but I like his point of view, has put forward. That is, it is very, very risky. When you are in a forest, you try to listen to noises, not to shout around. So it may be really risky to shout around and say, hey, here we are. I mean, this is, it may be they are too far away to come and join us, so as to say. It's a nice optimistic view. But anyway, I wouldn't do it, period. As a principle. In addition to that, there is much more. And this is the time to point it out also to Doug Vakoch. I'm really sorry, Doug, forgive me, but I have to express my point of view on this. Now, first of all, we do not know where extraterrestrials are. So this idea of sending around messages is just scientifically speaking, ridiculous, because we don't know where to point our antennas. You may say, oh, we point them on extrasolar planet. Okay. But still, there are a number of problems, the powers involved, how much money it would cost to send messages, what kind of messages, of course, we are going to send around, and so on and so forth. So it is not certainly a good, economically speaking, idea, but not a good idea in more general scientific terms. We know nothing about extraterrestrial. Please let us discover the first extraterrestrial civilization, and then we'll decide better what we want to do. But at the moment, it's just ridiculous, period. And so this is my opinion about METI. As you probably know, there has been quite a bit of discussions about METI in the very committee that I'm chairing, that is the SETI Permanent Committee of the IAEA. For instance, we meet every year at the International Astronautical Congress, which is in the fall, September, October each year. In 2006, the meeting was in Valencia, Spain. And this, at the time, the chair of the SETI committee was my predecessor, that is Shostak, and Doug, the coach, was there. So Doug was able to bring SET's opinion to his side. I was there too, and with me there were other people. So there was a heated debate that I would have preferred not to see within the SETI community, honest. The SETI community is already small enough. There are no more than 1,000 SETI astronomers to be optimistic worldwide. So if we start quarreling around among ourselves, it's the worst possible thing that we can do. Anyway, we had this debate in Valencia, and in the end, the two supporters of METI, messaging to extraterrestrial civilization, prevailed. So Seth Shostak declared to the IAEA, the hosting institution, the International Academy of Astronautics, that METI was a respectable activity within SETI. The IAEA didn't object because they said, well, you are the expert, we believe you, and so if you say so, we do what you claim. And so we modified the SETI protocols in order to admit METI. Now, please let me be frank once again. I'm not lacking respect to anyone. I'm not the guy who wants to provoke anything. I'm the guy who wants to solve problems, not to create more problems. So there were two illustrious members of the SETI community that resigned from the IAEA SETI committee, and they were John Billingham, who had been chair of the SETI committee before Jill Tarter, that is in the late 1990s, and Michael Michaud, who had been an important person, ambassador of the US for technology and so on in Tokyo. So a real technical expert, I would say. So they both resigned from the SETI committee. And of course, when that happened, the press immediately rushed to the SETI committee saying, you had two important people resign, what's the matter? And so this was, in conclusion, a bad point in the history of the SETI committee. And if you ask me, why didn't you resign too? I have to be very frank, please forgive me, but I am being frank. I did not resign because I was hoping to later take over as chair, as indeed it happened after 2010, and to stir the evolution, the further evolution of the SETI committee against METI, not in favor of METI. Okay? And this is precisely what happened. So when I finally was elected chair of the SETI committee in 2012, my position about METI was firm. I said, I don't want any METI supporters to be member of the SETI committee, to propagate this idea that we can send signals around. Even worse, if someone paid for us sending signals around, of course, supporting their political, philosophical, and religious views. SETI has to keep away from all religions of all kinds. I'm very neat about that. Sorry, I am not a believer. I am an atheist. And I want to keep science away from all religious pressures of all kinds. I hope I'm not going to pay personally for that. I hope people are reasoning, and even journalists have shown they are more mature about that now. But at that time, I'm talking about the late 90s, the early 2010 and so on, there was still considerable pressures by religious group saying, oh, we believe in the right gods, whereas they believe in their own gods, so we have to convert them to the right gods. Now, this position is absolutely intolerable to me. Keep SETI away from religions of all kinds. Sorry about getting enraged. You touched my bad part. Thank you.
I have to say, I have to go further than that. Keep religions away from everything except religions.
That was a bit of material that went over the edge. A bonus clip from a full episode of Event Horizon. New episodes every Thursday, so do be sure to hit subscribe. The full episode should be on your screen right about now.